I think a lot of us get to a point in our lives where we think to ourselves, fucking hate myself. And when we feel that, there's two scenarios that take place. Number one scenario is we do absolutely nothing. We just accept that we are and will always be this version of ourselves that we don't like some genetic mutation gone wrong that we got from our parents. And the second scenario, and the much harder process, is that we end up doing something about it. Run my first marathon in a few months. The problem is I'm super out of shape. Before I go and challenge Usain Bolt to a running match, I figured I should get my jiggly wiggly body accustomed to actually moving. I decided to commit myself to walking for an hour a day for the next 30 days. But when I stepped outside, it was 27 degrees Celsius and 80% humidity. I about gave up. But because I'm a glutton for punishment, my first day I decided to do this at a park that has 268 steps to hell, which I climbed 3 times. Luckily, it had a pretty view, also vending machine. First day of walking complete, went up those stairs 3 times, and now I feel like I need to throw up. I don't feel good. My stomach's churning and my legs are wobbly, but I got it. First day in the books. Growing up as a fat teenager in Japan was really, really rough because Asians love to tell you how fat you are. Hey mom, why you fat? Alright. I remember one time specifically, I was 13 years old and one of my family members told me that nobody in the world was ever gonna take me seriously because I was fat. Thanks, Mom! Here's the kicker though, I wasn't even fat. I mean, it was a little curvier than a wall thanks to the white side of my family, but if anything jiggles on you in Japan, the constant digs at my appearance compounded over time into a full-blown body dysmorphia. But instead of developing an aversion to food, I ended up steering the car in the opposite direction. And over time, the weight kept packing on until I was at my heaviest at like 90 kilos at 152 centimeters. Over the years, my weight has fluctuated up and down, but ever since I hit puberty, I was always on the chunkier side. When I was in my early 20s, aside from the lack of self-esteem I had due to my weight, I didn't really feel the physical effects of it. It really wasn't until I started creeping into my early 30s that I really started to feel the effects that being overweight was doing to my body. You know, like the sluggishness, the sore joints, just everything that comes with it. At 21 years old, I was able to inhale a 1-pound burrito supreme from my favorite 24-hour Mexican joint at 3 a.m. and feel absolutely nothing. God, I miss those days. There was a point about a month ago where I realized that I needed to make a drastic change in my diet, in my body, and my physical health, because I was getting to a point where I was really feeling sick. I was really feeling like if I continued at the pace I was going, I wasn't gonna last very long. I'm also at a point now that a lot of my family members, if they're not dead, are living with the consequences of abusing their body and not taking care of themselves. Diabetes, kidneys, heart attacks, strokes, I mean, you name it. Someone in my family has it. So feeling it for myself and watching my family members suffer with the consequences of their unhealthy lifestyles, it became imperative for me to wake up and really start taking my physical health seriously. But no matter how much we wish it was, change isn't instant. It takes practice to break the habits that I built over the last couple decades. One of my biggest milestones next year is that I'm gonna run my very first marathon, but I am in no physical shape to just get up and start running. So for my very first challenge, I wanted to keep it simple, something challenging but still doable at the same time, which is why I decided to start with walking 1 hour a day for 30 days. According to Harvard, walking 21 minutes a day can cut your risk of heart disease by 30%. But here's the thing, most people already know that there's benefits to walking. I mean, I did, but still, it took me a while to get up and get going because it's not about understanding the health benefits to walking that gets you to start walking. It's literally getting started and keeping consistent at it is where people have the hardest time. This is like one of my favorite quotes as to why people are not successful at things. It's easier not to do something than it is to do something. And then you start adding busy schedules on top of that. Girl, ain't nobody got time for that. But at some point I had to realize that my body wasn't gonna get any younger. I was just gonna continue to get weaker if I didn't decide to make a change before it was too late. I live a pretty sedentary lifestyle between being a full-time editor, being a content creator, being a streamer, I sit in a chair a lot. And on top of the work and everything that I do, taking care of sick family members, finding time was going to be one of the hardest things to do. Now, I couldn't walk at specific times a day because my schedule is all over the place. Some days I get home late, some days I have to go to work early, like it's everywhere. I had to figure out a way to carve out time throughout the day to make sure that I got my walking in. So sometimes I had to wake up at the ass crack of dawn, and sometimes I wouldn't walk until close to midnight. But I was committed. If I didn't have time, I was going to figure out how to make time. But still, there were 3 glaring big hurdles that I had to get through. Number 3 is time, and I already kind of touched on that, so I'm not going to go too much into detail on this, but finding time and figuring out time was one of my biggest stressors. It's kind of strange for me to think that it was really hard for me to carve out 1 hour a day out of a 24-hour span. I mean, a part of it was time. It was just, my busy schedule, family, work, other commitments. And some of it was laziness. Some of it was I was too tired after work that I didn't want to go because I couldn't get up early enough to go in the morning. A lot of it was really forcing myself to figure out a way to make the time. The second obstacle for me was pain. From body aches to side stitches to migraines to blisters to ankle pain, I felt it all. And you know what? Pain is a very big demotivator. Not only is it a demotivator, but it's also a cause of fear. I ended up herniating my disc a few years ago, 3 times in 1 year. And one of my biggest fears in doing exercises and moving my body is feeling that pain again. Horrible pain I've ever felt in my life. What I should have done was keep my body moving. But again, the fear and the pain was a very, very big demotivator for me. But one of the things that I kept telling myself is that pain, discomfort, soreness, all of that was going to be inevitable because I'm using muscles that aren't really being used ever. People should always consult with a medical professional if they're concerned about a pain. But for me, I knew some sort of pain, discomfort, and soreness that was just going to be a part of the program. And after a while, all the pain that I was feeling, even in my lower back, even in my ankles and my knees, it started to fade. It used to be that waking up in the morning was really, really hard for me because my body is just coming out of a stiff position and it hurt, it creaked, it ached. But after a while of walking, getting up in the morning, getting out of bed, it actually became a lot easier to get out of bed in the morning. One of the things that I struggled with towards the tail end of my walking challenge was that I was getting migraines daily for 2 weeks straight. I did end up seeing a doctor about it, and he said one of the reasons I was getting the migraines was honestly because of my sedentary lifestyle, and he believed that the walking was actually going to help a lot. And to be honest, it did. There was a lot of moments before I would head out the door where I was like, man, I really, really, really don't want to go out there, because when I get migraines, they are debilitating. All I want to do is lay in bed because I'm nauseous, head is pounding, I'm sensitive to light. But even then, I forced myself. I put the shoes on, I walked out the door. By the end of it, I noticed that a lot of my headache faded away. I mean, it would come back later on, but moving my body, getting the blood flowing, getting the muscles in my shoulders, moving about, that really, 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 really helped. A lot. It was actually one of the few things that would alleviate my migraine was going for a walk. The number 1 obstacle was myself. Getting started for me really wasn't that difficult because I was just excited to be doing something new, tackling this challenge. So getting out the door at first wasn't that hard. But 2 weeks into the challenge, the novelty of it started to wear off, and that's when I really, really had to dig deep and figure out a way to get myself out the door. Probably gonna sound stupid, but the only way that I was able to get out the door on some days was literally by just doing it. There was a lot of times where I wanted to say, fuck this, I'm done. But saying the words, fuck this, I'm done, is what got me into this position in the first place. So I knew that I owed it to myself to keep going. There are 2 books that really helped me get through this on days that I really, really didn't want to go. The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. And the second book was The Motivation Myth by Jeff Hayden. There's a quote from the latter book that I really, really liked, which is, motivation isn't something you have, motivation is something you get from yourself automatically from feeling good about achieving small success. It was really hard because not only is my brain really good at coming up with excuses, but it's even better at justifying those excuses. And a lot of the times the only way I could really override my brain was to not really think so hard about what it is that I was doing. Just take everything one step at a time. If I really wasn't feeling like doing something, to just say, hey, Start by putting on some exercise clothes. Great, we got it done. Now why don't we just put on some exercise shoes? Perfect, we got this far anyways, why don't we just walk out the door? Will I sit here and tell you walking 1 hour a day for 30 days completely changed my life? I'm not about to blow smoke up your ass. I didn't even lose weight throughout the challenges. If anything, I actually gained weight. At the beginning of this challenge, I weighed 84.1 kilos. 26 days later, I weigh more? Which normally would also be very demotivating. But here's the reality of 30-day challenges that I knew going into this 30-day challenge, is that 30 days is not long enough to change your habit or to change your body that drastically. I think what really helped me get through this challenge was going into it with very little expectation. I didn't go into this challenge thinking I was going to lose a lot of weight or feel a 180-degree difference in my physical and mental health. I was also realistic with the fact that throughout the 30 days, I wasn't going to stay motivated every single day. I knew there was going to come a time and point when the honeymoon phase would end and reality would set in. I went into this challenge with pretty realistic expectations, which is no expectations. My mom spent 30 years of her life in a pretty sedentary position. She works in her own pharmacy, and when customers aren't around, she sits most of the day in front of the TV. And between that and taking care of sick family members, she doesn't have a lot of time in the day to take care of herself, and that has been her life for the last 30 years. About 6 months ago, she called me to have this really serious discussion, and that discussion was she didn't think she was going to be alive much longer. At 64 years old, she was pushing 100 kilos, she had kidney disease, her face looked gaunt, she looked pale, and just by looking at her face, I really believed what she was saying when she said she didn't think she would live very much longer. Which is terrifying for me because she's the only parent I have left. So I took a look at her busy schedule and I made her carve out 30 minutes a day, and we started walking. After a while, I got a new job and my schedule changed, but luckily, she kept at it. But so far, between changing her diet and walking 30 minutes a day, she's managed to keep her kidney disease under control and lose 25 to 30 kilos in 6 months. When I first took her walking, it was like teaching a baby how to walk for the first time. It was almost like she forgot how to walk. But now she walks briskly, sometimes she'll go for a light jog. The other day, she was so excited because she was able to jump up and down, which she hasn't been able to do in a long time without hurting herself. I'm so incredibly proud of her. And although walking for 30 days, 1 hour a day didn't change my life drastically, I can say for sure that it changed my mom's life drastically, and she's only been walking 30 days every day for the last 6 months. So is walking worth it? I believe it is, 100%. It's not an immediate fix, but with some consistency, like my 60-year-old mom, I don't think it's ever too late to change the quality of somebody's life. At the point of recording this video, I've actually moved on to my next challenge, which is an 8-week couch to 5K. And let me tell you, going from a sedentary lifestyle to training for a marathon, I'm really glad that I started off with just a simple 1 hour walk a day. I feel like laying down that core foundation through my walks really helps me move my body more efficiently when I start running. And on days that I don't go for a run, I still do my best to try and get out there and go for a light walk, because I definitely believe in the power of it.